Hey, welcome back to Morning Joe. Great shot of a beautiful city, Chicago. Let's bring in right now a most beautiful man. Vanity Fair columnist Christopher Hitchens. He's the author of God Is Not Great, How Religion Poisons Everything, and that is now out, friends, in paperback.
Very
Christopher,
good.
thank you for being with us. Let me ask you about your thoughts regarding the Justice Department's release of these documents regarding enhanced interrogation techniques.
And I can't say that the book is available at fine bookstores everywhere. Or
Everywhere and on Amazon.com.
There we go. I mean, I've once wrote a piece for Vanity Fair about the experience of being waterboarded, and I was pleased to see today that at least in these documents they know what they're doing. I mean, they understand what the horror of it really is. It used to be in the press, you remember, people would say that it simulates the feeling of drowning. Mm-hmm. You've read that, I'm sure.
Yes.
In fact, it doesn't simulate it at all. You are being drowned, except slowly.
Right.
There's no element of simulation involved. You are undergoing the drowning experience. If Khalid Sheikh Mohammed put up with 2 minutes worth of it, as I've heard it said he did, it's amazing that he could have lasted that long. He may have been wanting us to kill him, as he keeps on demanding that we do, if you remember. He keeps insisting on being executed, because that's what would have happened if it had gone on any longer.
What do you think? Do you think it is a positive development that the approved techniques are now public, have been released? Does that make America a stronger country? Does it make America a weaker country?
The publicizing of them doesn't make any difference either way to that, but what it's part of, which is a clarifying and a renunciation of illegal methods, ought to make us stronger, in that all the evidence is that if you resort to techniques like that, you don't just disgrace yourself, you make yourself liable to junk information.
Do you believe that waterboarding...
I can tell you one thing. I mean, people who are being waterboarded will undoubtedly say anything to make it stop. And the evidence is that a lot of people gave very misleading, perhaps maliciously so, information for that reason.
Well, what about the information that the agency claims they got that led them to Khalid Sheikh Mohammed, and after waterboarding Khalid Sheikh Mohammed, getting information that ended up being accurate?
Well, I'm always in favor of taking claims like that at their face value. Let's say that just for once, the famous case of the ticking bomb, you know, the one that everyone always uses, really was the case. Let's just suppose that for one time, though I think the claim needs to be examined a lot more closely. The danger is that you do that once because you're really under pressure. The country's just had a traumatic attack. There's a huge pressure, demand to get results, and all of this. And then what happens? As with the wiretapping, clearly the president wants to know. I want to know every phone call that came in and out of the country yesterday, when it's September the 12th. But the danger is then that becomes routine. It's no longer an emergency measure. It's no longer a one-off thing that you might later have to confess in court and say, listen, we think we were justified in doing this. Instead, without anyone voting on it, without anyone authorizing it, without it being legalized or even discussed, you've got an area of your bureaucracy operating outside the law. And then you're a banana republic.
Christopher, we have Chris Matthews and Sam Tannenhouse with us. Sam has a question for you. Sam.
Hey, Christopher, how you doing? My old colleague from Vanity Fair. My question is, do you think there was a period when U.S. intelligence actually operated within reasonable bounds and was doing its job in a useful way? Or is this a lost cause, I guess is what I'm asking.
I think it's a very long time since the CIA has been much use to us. I mean, the CIA was consistently wrong about the Soviet Union. It was reporting in the last years of its existence that it was a growing economic superpower and military power. It could not have been more wrong or misleading.
And some of us forget who was responsible for some of that intelligence is the current Defense Secretary, Robert Gates, right?
That's absolutely true. And then it refused to believe that Saddam Hussein was going to invade Kuwait. It was unvaryingly and invariably wrong about Iraq. Senator Moynihan, I remember, called at one point for it to be abolished. He said it's beyond reform now. You'd have to tear it down and start all over again.
Chris Matthews, give me your assessment.
And that's to say nothing. I'm sorry, that's to say nothing about the criminal things that it did. I mean, for example, it was the CIA that told the South African government where to find Nelson Mandela when their own police couldn't do it. We fingered Mandela for 25 years in jail, and his wife too later on. I mean, you could go on a lot about the things that it did that were disgraceful, appalling.
Chris Matthews.
You know, the irony here is, Rich, I remember back I was in grad school during the Vietnam War at Chapel Hill, and and a guy comes in to see us, and we were studying somewhere in the graduate school hangout, and I think it was Douglas Hall or whatever it was, and this guy comes in, he had just come in, there had been demonstrators against him, he had sort of snuck onto campus, he was a CIA recruiter. And he wanted to talk to people, and I said, what the hell, I'll talk to you. So I'm talking to the guy, and he says, first of all, we're the worst paying agency. Your top salary will be about $11,000 a year. It's a boring job. There's no black bag jobs. All you'll be doing is studying Soviet economic information, statistics, national income accounting, that sort of thing. Really dry stuff. Do you want the job? So maybe if I had taken the job, maybe if more people had been willing in the 60s to take these damn jobs, we would have understood the Soviets' imminent decline. But
you know, Chris, that's funny you say that, because people that work in the CIA have a saying, because when their friends find out they're in the CIA, they always ask, well, they'll say, do you do this sort of thing, you know, like they do on 24? And the big joke is, no, they do that on another floor here. And on all the floors at Langley, they say that, oh, no, that's done on another floor here, because it is a very, very boring job for so many people. But a lot of people go into that because they believe, like Dwight Eisenhower believed and others believe, that this was critical. Christopher, so what happens when we have another terror attack? Do you think we'll be a bit more measured? Do you agree with Moynihan that we would be better without a Central Intelligence Agency on that morning?
No. I mean, he was only saying that you'd have to abolish the one we've got. We'd have to begin again. I'll tell you what my private dread is about the next terror attack, is that it's carried out by someone who was released from Guantanamo. Yeah. I really hope that doesn't happen, if you follow my train of thought.
Yes,
you don't have to. You can see what I'm...
That would be a pretty much worst case
that
scenario.
Would be really bad, because it's certainly an offense to justice to have people there who were, handed over by their rivals as a means of getting them out of the way or out of Afghanistan. And we allowed ourselves to be used in that way, and also to pick up some innocent people. But it's just as much an offense to justice, and needs to be pointed out, that if active duty Al-Qaeda and Taliban members are released and live to fight another day. And it would be a real horror show for the administration if a gang of those goons was the next assailant.
So, Christopher, you're very critical of the way the CIA has been run over the past 6-7 years. Do you think the people running it are bad Americans? Do you think they enjoy torture? Do you think they're just ignorant, evil? What malady do you think infects their mind?
It seems to me that the real crime, let's not call it a crime, one uses the word too cheaply, the real shortcoming is laziness. I mean, because just take the case of Iraq, which was so central. Their argument was, of course Saddam Hussein wouldn't be wanting to invade Kuwait. He wouldn't be that stupid. They always thought he was a rational actor. They thought he understood deterrence and self-interest and so forth. They thought they wouldn't do it if they were he. This is no way to think at all. It's just bureaucratic reflex. That's been the main problem. I think the main problem has been stupidity and laziness. But yes, there must have been some sadists and crooks involved in the CIA, because there was so much, collusion with torture regimes in Chile and Uruguay and Paraguay and Brazil. All over these areas, you found the footprints of the Central Intelligence Agency.
All right. Well, we certainly differ on that point.
Absolutely.
But Christopher Hitchens, thank you for being with us.
That's what we're about. Christopher Hitchens, thank you.
All right. Coming up next.